and welcome back to another episode of Hope from Home, the show where we bring you conversations of hope from our home to yours. Today, we begin the program with a conversation Jermaine Bagnall had with Jeff Pereira, a men's mental health facilitator, about some unique stresses that some men might be facing during this time. After that, I'll be doing an interview. I'll be speaking with Felipe Arango, who explains to us how the traditional Holy Week missions in Colombia had to be transferred online this year. We end with Noel Ocol speaking with Sarah Yaklik of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles about some wonderful initiatives that took place on Divine Mercy Sunday. And of course, they'll all tell us where they're finding hope from our home to yours.
Hi there, Jeff. Thank you for joining us and sharing your knowledge with the Salt and Light Media team and the audience.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, let's just dive right into it. What drew you into the work that you do?
Well, I grew up in a home of domestic violence. So my father was physically violent towards my mom. So growing up, I was witness to that and the realities of what women and girls go through and have to navigate in everyday life. But what I was also tuned into was, the realities for men, like what's going on with the men in our lives, and why are so many of us fluent in the language of violence. So that got me on a journey in my personal life that led to the work I'm doing in my professional life towards kind of building bridges between men and women and places of understanding about, our ideas of what it means to be a man and how that can be a positive and healthy impact on the world we live in.
That's great. That now is needed now more than ever, particularly going through this quarantine and COVID-19, where we're seeing a spike in domestic violence cases. Speaking of the quarantine, what are some unique stresses that men might be facing right now?
I think right now for a lot of men, it's true of everybody, but men are navigating loss of income, whether it's, losing a portion of their income or losing their job or trying to figure out what the next steps are. So a bit of that is that loss of control. And as men, we feel an internal pressure to solve problems and to be a certainty. And these are uncertain times. So it's really hard for us as men to cope around those pieces. But then you also add other factors, like we as men are pretty much challenged when it comes to our emotional literacy. A lot of us, if you could say, are stranded on islands when it comes to our emotional connection with others. For example, there are men who their place of socialization is their place of worship. So now that people are able to meet in person, women are good at continuing those conversations through the phone and whatnot. But for men, we don't have those rituals and habits of staying connected, and that becomes more of an issue when we enter our 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, these habits of building connection between one another. So I think those lead to some of the factors that men are struggling with around isolation and trying to feel in control of these situations. And when we're feeling lost and out of control, that's where it can become dangerous, where we're having trouble leaning into good habits and struggling with the fear or the shame that we're feeling, and how we can make a difference around those issues by working together versus feeling the fear and the pressure take us over. And that can lead to some of the harm we see, where we take out our frustration or our fear on those around us, those we have power over. And that sometimes can be our partners, the women in our lives, and also children that are in our lives as well.
Mm-hmm. How can men better cope with the stress of COVID-19 and the quarantine and the job loss? Like, what sort of actions can be taken?
I mean, obviously there's also the opportunity of leading into your faith and prayer and trying to do that inner work and in the conversations you have with God and in prayer. But there's also the work that you can do internally to kind of meet God halfway as far as finding ways to cope. For us as men, what we tend to do in certain situations and problems, we can either enter our fight, flight, or freeze mode. What we need to learn to do is to face, rather than being defensive or paralyzed in fear and in concern, or avoid these situations. We can kind of face and deal with what we're feeling. And what we're feeling is such an important part of this conversation, and when we talk about things like self-care, taking care of ourselves, that doesn't mean you have to do it by yourself. Again, it's not about staying on that emotional island, if you will, or turtling. It's about what you can do to build connection and connect to others. And we'll talk a bit about that in a second. But I think one of the factors as well is learning to keep conflict healthy. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be trials and tribulations. There's going to be moments where we don't agree and moments where emotions flare. And that's okay to feel what you're feeling. But it's about what you do in those situations. It's what you do that matters in conflict, and how we can keep it constructive and move towards solutions.
Absolutely. So being solution oriented is absolutely key. Talk to me about emotional health and emotional immunity for men in social isolation. Like, what does that mean? What does that look like?
I think part of that for me, when I say emotional immunity, it's kind of how we can protect ourselves when it comes to the impact of the emotions we're feeling. So the first thing I would say is avoid the virus, but not your feels, right? So it's feel your feelings, name what you're feeling. And when you can name what you're feeling, you can then recognize the emotion that you're feeling. And when you recognize, okay, what's happening for me right now? I'm getting upset, the anxiety. Why is that happening? And taking that moment to kind of step back. So it's slowing the spread of anger is the next thing. I would say it's channeling anger into action. Anger is not a bad thing. It's important. It's an important emotion. What we do again with it is what matters. So that could be for you, that could be prayer, that could be taking a step back and exhaling. I think it's an important part of the conversation is what we do in that moment. There's a great writer named Young Pueblo, and he says the pause before we act is the space where we reclaim our power. So I think taking that moment to step back and exhale is a big part of this. And that's also then staying in touch without touching these days, right? So checking in with your partner, checking in with friends. I think building that idea of self-care is not doing it by myself. So not just always leaning on your partner, talking to people, talking to family or friends. And obviously you can connect with a priest or get professional help as well. So there's so many different spaces and people that we can talk to and connect with, so that we're not feeling alone in doing this work. Because really something we need to kind of navigate together.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely, what you say definitely resonates with me. I'm fortunate to have a group of good buddies where we keep in touch using WhatsApp. Every now and then we'll use just group video chats, and we find that's very helpful because we're all in different stages. We have a friend who's away by himself, doesn't live near family, and doesn't really connect with people. So we kind of connect with him. I have another friend married, multiple kids who are young, so he's navigating that. Another friend who's a new father. So we're definitely finding those tools very helpful to bridge that gap that you sort of speak of, to be able to not even network, but definitely communicate. So I definitely hear what you're saying and definitely see the value. During this time of high stress, high worry, what is your hope for people during this time?
I think that we're all using these new phrases like the new normal, and so whatever you want to describe it as, when we return to a semblance of normalcy, return to life as we knew it. It's obviously going to be changed, but what are the things we can take forward with us? I think part of that is recognizing the value for nurturing and caring for one another. I think that's so important to recognize that it's not really a conversation of us versus them. I feel that we're so divided right now as a people. It's really realizing that it's a conversation of us. So how can we come together in a way where we're caring for one another and recognizing that when my interest is put into the collective well-being of all of us as a people, it lifts everybody up. And it's not just because, we're seeing that with this virus, everyone is susceptible. And it's to different degrees that we're able to kind of handle it and cope. And whether it's getting access to healthcare or, as we talked about, being able to emotionally handle the stresses of it. I think that if we can support one another, that makes it more easy for us as a society to move forward. And I think we can take this lesson into all kinds of issues that we wrestle with in everyday life.
Thank you very much for that, Jeff. That's amazing, wise words. And I think it'll really help people, help men continue to build bridges and not just survive this time, but definitely thrive. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Felipe, it's so good to have you with us. Felipe is joining us from Bogota, Colombia.
Hi, Linda. Nice to see you. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine. Really happy. And this Easter, resting now with my family.
You just finished directing the first ever digital missions for Holy Week. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yes, Linda. Actually, it was kind of funny because we were looking towards the Holy Week as usual in our country, and we were planning the last things to travel to these towns in the middle of nowhere that we visit each Holy Week, and to have to spend time with these people, helping them have a special Holy Week, and the coronavirus start attacking like our country, our people, and the plans changed for everybody. So it was funny because we were like asking each other what we are going to do. Our missions, it's like a tradition for us, like visiting these people and living our Holy Week, trying like to be like Jesus, and everything changed one day. So um, I don't know, my family, my friends were kind of sad because they will be at home, but without their Holy Week, their missions. So it was like looking how can we keep living our Holy Week even though we were not going to the missions, and I mean the only answer I could have was why not having digital missions.
That's so interesting. And can you tell us a little bit how the missions were digitalized?
Yeah, I started to see the priests and movements and the people in Instagram, Facebook. They were doing lives of the masses and some meditations and rosaries. And what I thought was everybody's going to make like a short effort, a little effort to give something to their communities, for this Holy Week. But no one will be able to, I don't know, like to have 120 hours of live content, So I decided to start calling priests and people I knew, and ask them, would you like to be part of digital missions, and we can use your like the content you were going to do for the missions, but if we all join together, we'll be able to have a lot of content for everybody, So it was, like start calling people, telling them what the idea was, and organizing the schedule for everyone, and at the same time, like building a page so the people could go there and look for the content, and then they could watch the content,
So can you tell us a little bit about this webpage and what was the impact that these missions had on everyone who could join around the world?
We achieved more or less 8,000 visitors in the
Wow.
webpage, So if you change this to souls, we can say that at least 8,000 souls visit Jesus. They were looking for something this Holy Week, and at the end, these clicks weren't paid clicks. These clicks were souls asking for Jesus, and I hope they could have an experience of God thanks to this, you know. So we have 8,000 visitors from around all the world, from Canada to Argentina. We even though have visitors from China.
Wow, that's so cool. I include myself in those 8,000 people because I was also a part of the missions, which actually brought me so much closer to everything that we do during the Holy Week. So can you tell me a little bit what you learned during these missions?
I learned many things. One of them was if we have faith, Jesus is in a piece of bread. Why we can have faith that Jesus is in the same piece of bread, but we are just having like I don't know my prayer through through a device, through a screen, you know, and that it's kind of the same faith. If we have faith on the bread, why can't we have faith on the same bread through a device? And that people actually are looking for Jesus, even though we can not go to the church, the physical church. They want Jesus near them, you know, and that we should like as a church, start making change in our way of taking Jesus to the people and giving them the opportunity to be near Jesus through technology.
Felipe, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and for sharing this incredible initiative to bring Holy Week to so many people around the world. For any of the Spanish speakers watching, you can go follow Aura on Instagram. They are at Aura Somos to see more initiatives like this one. And you can visit their website, somosaura.org. Thank you so much again, Felipe, and God bless.
Thank you, Linda, for everything. Thank you for the team that's working on this. And I hope people could visit our page and enjoy what we are doing.
Hello, Sarah Yaklik. Thanks so much for joining us virtually all the way from sunny California. How are you?
Good. It's a pleasure to be here and just, connect digitally during this very interesting and challenging time.
Definitely interesting times. As the Chief Digital Officer for the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, I'd love to talk to you about how the Catholic community in LA is coping with the restrictions to the sacraments.
Sure. I'll be honest, right? It's a hard time. I mean, we are a sacramental church. Our rituals are beautiful. Community is absolutely essential. Yes. And so these are really, really difficult times, especially when we need to go to the sacraments, for grace to be able to manage everything that we're facing. So it is this, intense period for us. But yet, and somehow I've seen through that intensity, this rise of faith in a new way. And I have the gift of watching that come to life online. And for me, despite the challenges, right? Like Jesus didn't call us into relationship with mobile devices or technology, right? He called us into relationship with him. So while I don't want us to depend on technology, it is beautiful to see the faith come to life and to bring Jesus and hope along the digital highways.
Yes, that's incredible. Are there any interesting initiatives that the Archdiocese of Los Angeles is doing sort of to help reach out to the Catholic community in this difficult time?
Sure. So, one thing Archbishop Gomez had shared in his message as president of the United States Bishop Conference and then to the faithful here in Los Angeles, he said in his Holy Week message, he said, our churches may be closed, but Christ is not quarantined. And that has rung true in all that we have, are seeing. And we have this beautiful initiative called Hearts to Serve. And that's a joint initiative between our Archdiocesan Department of Life, Justice, and Peace and the Knights of Columbus and St. Vincent de Paul Society. And so we're trying the church to be Jesus, to help the poor, to be present where there is need. But then I've just seen our churches and our schools step up. I mean, teachers are learning new ways of doing distance learning because they want to be connected with their students. We have parishes who didn't even have a website or social media presence, now have both and are live streaming their masses to bring make that opportunity for spiritual communion available. So I just see people stepping up to really, bring Jesus to life.
Yes. So, in your role as the Chief Digital Officer, you must be hearing some incredible stories of faith and inspiration. Is there anything or anyone in particular that you can share with us that really sticks out?
Sure. So in I think kind of two things. Well, number one, I kind of touched on that, just the rise of the lay faithful, really just doing what they can to be bold witnesses and communicate. But this past Sunday, Divine Mercy Sunday, when we saw a parish announcement saying that they got permits from the city, so to do it in complete compliance with city officials, but to bring the Eucharist out into the streets. So I went to go and capture photos to share that on social media, and it was by far so moving. I mean, you would watch the procession go by, and they knew where their parishioners lived. People would open their doors and immediately fall to their knees. I mean, it was like they recognized that Jesus was fully present there and just were, adoring him and thanking him and asking for intercession. It was unbelievable. So basically there was a procession. So I guess the priest and I guess some of the altar servers or whatever literally processed down the road. Did they close off the streets for that? The police Yeah, basically they did. They got the permit, so the police knew what route they were going. But it was basically on the back of a pickup or a big float, basically. And it was this huge monstrance, and there were a deacon and a couple of different people from the parish. Obviously we couldn't have lots of people because of social distancing, but they just for about an hour and a half went through the community, and it was and people's homes. They had altars decorated, and we were wearing red for Divine Mercy, and it was and they were all from their yards, right? So they were all taking into account all the restrictions and the rules that we have,
Of course.
But just making this a moment of prayer, but a moment of community, right? Because that's what we ache for, is this sense of community, despite the isolation.
Yeah. Is there a place on your website or something that we can see some of these images?
Yeah.
That seems really remarkable.
Yeah, they're all on our social media. So if you go to Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at LA Catholics, you could see photos from that day. And you'll see, families kneeling on the streets, holding a picture of Divine Mercy. You'll see elderly couples standing on their steps. It really was just a beautiful scene.
That's amazing. Thank you. Now, one last question. I like to ask everybody this same question at the end. Where do you find hope, personally, where do you find hope in this difficult period of time?
Yeah. No, and it's an important question, right? Because I think we're all suffering. I'll be honest, there will be days that in my little apartment I cried and just feel like I miss the Eucharist, and I miss my community, and I miss my family dearly. And I know that I'm not the only one. But where I think I have seen hope, and particularly in my role, I'm so grateful to watch families do things creatively to pray together, right? I think families are learning how to pray together like they've never prayed together before. And so I'm seeing this rise of the domestic church in this beautiful new way. And for that gives me hope, because Jesus is alive, right? Jesus is not quarantined. He is very much alive. And I thank the families. I thank the teachers who are working so hard. I thank the lay staff members at our parishes who are doing all they can to bring Jesus. And so that to me is hope, and that is Jesus.
Well, this will all pass soon, I'm sure, and we'll all be back in our churches sooner than we think. So hopefully that'll be the case.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you talking to us today, and it's always a pleasure talking to you. And I'm sure that everything will be back to normal again soon.
Yes. And thank you for all you do, because your ministry, bringing the Word of God to TV and internet, is so important. It's such a lifesaver for people. So thank you for all you do.
Thanks again, Sarah. We'll see you later.
Take care. Bye-bye.
And that's all for today. It's so true what Jeff was telling Jermaine. If you're a man who is struggling at this time, please know that help is available. Also, what did you think of my conversation with Felipe? It was so good to speak with him. I didn't think I would be able to join Holy Week missions this year, but because they were transferred online, I was able to do them and reconnect with everyone. And how about that Eucharistic procession in Los Angeles? Has your diocese done anything similar? Share your stories with us by following Salt and Light Media on all of our social media platforms and commenting with the hashtag #HopeFromHome. If you missed any part of the episode and you'd like to watch it again, visit our website, saltandlighttv.org/hopefromhome. We hope that these stories inspire you to stay positive and remind you that we're all still connected together through hope.